The funeral reception was held in Mom's living room, the same room where we'd opened Christmas presents for 30 years. Now it was filled with flowers, casseroles, and my brothers dividing up our mother's life like they were splitting a dinner check. The house has to be worth at least $800,000, my older brother Daniel was saying to a small group of relatives. Prime location for bedrooms, that beautiful garden Mom spent decades perfecting. We'll probably put it on the market next month. My middle brother Kevin nodded sagely. Real estate market's hot right now. We could probably get close to 900 if we stage it right. I stood near the kitchen doorway, still wearing my black dress from the service, watching my brothers plan their windfalls while mourners were still offering condolences. Mom had been buried exactly 4 hours ago. What about Maria? Our cousin Linda asked, glancing toward me. Doesn't she get a say in this? Daniel waved dismissively. Maria will be fine. She can have the garage apartment. It's got its own entrance, totally separate. Perfect for someone in her situation. My situation. I was 31, unmarried, and according to my family's narrative, barely scraping by as a freelance graphic designer. The garage apartment had been my teenage bedroom, converted when I'd briefly moved back home during college. It was maybe 400 square feet. The main house is where the real value is, Kevin added. Three-way split makes the most sense. Daniel, me and Mom always planned it that way. That was news to me, but I stayed quiet. I'd learned over the years that correcting my brother's assumptions rarely went well. Aunt Patricia joined the conversation. What about your mother's business assets? The rental properties? Daniel's chest puffed with importance. Kevin and I have been helping Mom manage those for years. We know every tenant, every lease agreement. Maria wouldn't know where to start with property management. This was partially true. Daniel and Kevin had helped collect rent checks for the past few years, though their idea of management mostly involved cashing deposits and calling Mom when anything needed repairs. What they didn't know was that I'd been handling everything else. The bookkeeping, tax filings, maintenance scheduling, tenant screening, lease negotiations, and financial planning. Mom and I had decided years ago that it was easier to let the boys think they were in charge while I actually ran the business. How many properties are there? Someone asked. 4 rental houses plus the commercial building downtown, Kevin replied. Mom was always smart with investments. The whole portfolio's probably worth close to $3 million. $3.7 million, I said quietly, speaking for the first time in an hour. Everyone turned to look at me. Daniel frowned. How would you know the exact number? Because I've been managing the portfolio for the past 6 years, I said simply. The appraisals were updated last month. Kevin laughed. Maria, that's sweet, but collecting a few rent checks isn't the same as managing properties. Daniel and I handle the real business side. I nodded. Of course you do. The truth was more complicated than that, but this wasn't the time or place for complicated truths. Mom's funeral reception wasn't the moment to explain that I'd been running a property management company for the past 8 years, or that her 4 rental houses were just a small part of my larger business operations. So we're all in agreement then, Daniel announced to the room. Daniel, Kevin, and Maria inherit equally, but Maria gets the garage apartment since it suits her lifestyle better. Actually, I said, reaching into my purse, I think there might be some confusion about Mom's plans. I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the coffee table where everyone could see it. The room gradually fell quiet as people noticed the legal documents. We'll split Mom's house 3 ways, Daniel had said just moments before. You get the garage apartment. Now I pulled out the legal papers, the ones I'd been carrying for 3 years, and placed them carefully on top of Mom's favorite photo album. Actually, you have 48 hours to vacate. Their faces when they saw the will date went completely white. The first document was clearly labeled, Last Will and Testament of Catherine Elena Rodriguez. The date at the top read March 15, 2021, 3 years ago. Daniel grabbed the papers first, his eyes scanning rapidly. This can't be right. Kevin leaned over his shoulder, reading along. Maria inherits everything? The house, the rental properties, the business accounts. That's impossible, Daniel said, his voice rising. Mom never mentioned changing her will. We had an agreement that everything would be split 3 ways. I opened the folder and pulled out additional documents. She also wanted you to have these. The next paper was a detailed accounting of every rental property expense for the past 6 years. Every repair, every improvement, every tax payment, every insurance premium. And next to each expense was a notation. Paid by Maria Rodriguez, Rodriguez Property Management. Kevin's face was getting red. What is this supposed to mean? It means I've been covering all the costs for Mom's rental properties since 2018, I explained calmly. Maintenance, taxes, insurance, repairs, improvements. Everything except the actual mortgage payments, which Mom handled herself. I pulled out another document. This is the operating agreement for Rodriguez Property Management. I've been running the family properties as part of my larger business for the past 6 years. Daniel was frantically flipping through pages. Your larger business? Maria, you design websites. What larger business? I manage 43 rental properties across the county, I said. Mom's 4 houses represent about 11% of my portfolio. My company grossed $2.8 million last year. The room had gone completely silent. Even the conversations in the kitchen had stopped as people strained to hear what was happening. Kevin found his voice first. That's impossible. You live in that tiny apartment downtown. You drive a 10-year-old Toyota. You've never mentioned owning any business. My apartment is small because I travel frequently for property acquisitions, I said. My car is reliable and paid for. And I didn't mention my business because every time I tried to talk about work, you'd interrupt to explain how real estate actually works. Aunt Patricia leaned forward to read over Daniel's shoulder. Catherine left everything to Maria? When did she do this? 3 years ago, I said. Right after Kevin suggested she should sell the rental properties and put the money in a retirement account earning 2% interest. Kevin's face went from red to purple. That was sound financial advice. Those properties were too much work for an elderly woman to manage. Which is why she'd already transferred the management to me, I pointed out. But she was concerned that you didn't understand the value of what she'd built. Daniel was still staring at the will. This says you inherit everything. The house, the rental properties, the business accounts, even her personal belongings. That's correct. But what about us? Kevin demanded. We're her sons too. I pulled out another document. She left you both very generous gifts. The next paper was a cashier's check made out to Daniel Rodriguez for $50,000. The one beneath it was identical except it had Kevin's name. $50,000 each? Daniel's voice cracked. That's it. That's significantly more than either of you ever contributed to her properties or her care, I said gently. And it's exactly what she wanted you to have. Kevin was reading the letter that came with his check. She says she hopes we'll use this money to start building something of our own, instead of assuming we're entitled to what she built. Daniel found the same message in his envelope. She says she's proud of what Maria has accomplished and trusts her to continue the family legacy. I pulled out one final document. This is a copy of the property management agreement Mom and I signed 6 years ago. She transferred operational control to me but retained ownership until her death. As of today, I officially own the properties I've been managing all along. The reality was starting to sink in. Daniel looked around the living room with new eyes. This house, you own this house now. I do. And you're giving us 48 hours to leave? I shook my head. I'm giving you 48 hours to remove your personal belongings. You were never living here full-time. You both have your own homes. But you've been using Mom's house as storage for the past few years, and I need that space cleared out. Kevin was reading through more of the documents. It says here that you've been paying for Mom's home health aid, and her medications, and the house maintenance. For the past 3 years, yes. How much? Daniel asked quietly. I pulled out my phone and showed them a spreadsheet. Approximately $18,000 per year. Mom's Medicare covered most of her medical expenses, but the home health aid, the house maintenance, the property taxes, and various other costs added up. $54,000, Kevin said, doing the math. You spent $54,000 taking care of Mom. I spent $54,000 making sure she could stay in her home and maintain her independence, I corrected. It wasn't charity. It was family. Daniel was looking confused. But why didn't you tell us you were doing all this? Why didn't you ask us to help? I had to think about that question. Do you remember Kevin's response when I suggested we hire a home health aide 2 years ago? Kevin shifted uncomfortably. I said we should look into more affordable options. You said Mom didn't need some stranger in her house, and if she needed help, family should provide it, I reminded him. Then you explained that you were too busy with work and Daniel was dealing with his divorce. So obviously I should handle it since my little design business was more flexible. Daniel winced. I don't remember it exactly like that. I do, said Aunt Patricia. As I was here that day. You both made it very clear that Maria should handle Mom's care because the rest of you had more important priorities. The room was getting uncomfortable. Several relatives were starting to look embarrassed for my brothers. Kevin tried a different approach. Okay, so you've been helping Mom. That's great, really. But she left you a multi-million-dollar estate. Don't you think that's a little disproportionate? Disproportionate to what? I asked. To the fact that I've been managing her properties for 6 years without payment? To the fact that I handled all her medical appointments and financial planning? To the fact that I spent 3 years gradually taking over all her responsibilities so she could age gracefully in her own home. I pulled out my business card and handed it to Daniel. Rodriguez Property Management, Comprehensive Real Estate Solutions. I've been running this company for 8 years. I currently manage 43 properties, employ 12 people, and last year we facilitated over $8 million in real estate transactions. Daniel stared at the card. $8 million? In transactions, not profit, I clarified. My personal income last year was approximately $400,000. The number hit the room like a physical blow. Kevin actually sat down. 400,000? Daniel repeated. Maria, how is that possible? You don't act like someone who makes that kind of money. How exactly should someone who makes that kind of money act? I asked, genuinely curious. I don't know. Fancy car, expensive clothes, big house. I have a reliable car that I own outright, professional clothes that are appropriate for my work, and I rent a small apartment because I travel frequently and don't need much space, I said. I save and invest most of my income instead of spending it on status symbols. Aunt Patricia was reading over my shoulder. Maria, this says you own 17 properties yourself in addition to managing properties for other owners. That's correct. What kind of properties? Residential rentals, commercial office space, and 3 small apartment buildings. I also own the building where my office is located. Kevin was shaking his head slowly. I don't understand. How did we not know any of this? Because you never asked, I said simply. In 6 years of family dinners and holidays, neither of you ever asked me what my business actually involved or how it was going. You'd make jokes about my little website projects and change the subject. Daniel looked stricken. You seem so quiet about work. We assumed it wasn't going well. I'm quiet about work because every time I tried to share something, you'd interrupt to give me advice about things you didn't understand, I said. It was easier to just let you think what you wanted to think. The truth was more painful than that, but I wasn't ready to explain how it felt to watch your brothers dismiss your accomplishments while assuming they were smarter and more successful than you. Or how exhausting it became to pretend you were struggling when you were actually thriving. Kevin was still processing. So when Mom got sick and we talked about her care options. You were talking to someone who'd been running a successful business for years and had plenty of resources to help, I finished. But you assumed I was barely getting by, so you dismissed most of my suggestions as unrealistic. And when we offered to help you find a real job, with benefits. You were talking to someone who employs 12 people and provides them with excellent benefits, I said. Someone who was considering offering you both positions in my company, actually. Daniel's head snapped up. You were going to offer us jobs? I was considering it. You both have skills that could be useful in property management. But you made it clear you thought my business was some kind of hobby that I'd eventually grow out of. The room fell silent again. I could see people processing this information, trying to reconcile the Maria they thought they knew with the person who'd just revealed a multi-million-dollar business and estate inheritance. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled slightly. Actually, I said, there's one more thing you should probably know. I showed them the message. Congratulations on your mother's properties officially transferring. The Martinez acquisition is ready for your signature whenever you're available. James, First National Commercial Lending. Kevin squinted at the screen. What's the Martinez acquisition? I'm buying a 12-unit apartment building next month, I explained. It'll be my largest single property acquisition to date. The seller is asking $1.9 million. Daniel made a choking sound. You're buying a $2 million building? With a substantial down payment and excellent financing terms, yes. It should add approximately $24,000 per month to my rental income. I put my phone away and looked around the room. Mom knew about all of this. She was incredibly proud of what I'd built, and she wanted to make sure her properties would be managed by someone who understood their value. She never told us, Kevin said weakly. She tried to, Aunt Patricia said firmly. Catherine was always talking about how proud she was of Maria's business. But you boys never seemed to be listening. I pulled out one final document from my folder. This is a letter Mom wrote to both of you last year. She asked me to share it today. The letter was in Mom's careful handwriting, the same script we'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists our entire lives. Daniel read it aloud, his voice getting shakier with each sentence. My dear sons, by the time you read this, I hope you'll understand the decisions I've made about my estate. Maria has been taking care of me and managing my properties for years, without any expectation of inheritance or reward. She's built a successful business while staying humble and generous with her family. I'm leaving her my properties because she's already been running them better than I ever did. I'm leaving you each $50,000 because I love you both, but I worry that you've never learned to build something for yourselves. I hope this will motivate you to discover your own talents and create your own successes, instead of assuming you're entitled to what others have built. Maria worked for everything she has. I hope you'll do the same. If you're reading this letter with anger or resentment, you're missing the point. If you're reading it with curiosity about how to build something meaningful with your lives, then you're ready to make me proud. All my love, Mom. The room was completely quiet when Daniel finished reading. Kevin was staring at his hands. Daniel was rereading the letter with tears in his eyes. She wanted us to learn to build something ourselves, Kevin said finally. That's what the $50,000 is for, I said gently. Seed money. A chance to start over and figure out what you're actually good at. Daniel looked up at me. And the 48 hours to clear out our stuff? Is because I need to start preparing this house for either sale or rental, I said. I haven't decided which yet. But either way, it needs to be empty and professionally cleaned first. Kevin stood up slowly. Maria, I owe you an apology. We both do. We've been treating you like the family failure when you've actually been the most successful person in the room. You've been treating me like someone you didn't bother to get to know, I corrected. There's a difference. Daniel folded the letter carefully. What happens now? I mean, between us. As a family. I thought about that. Now you decide whether you want to be my brothers or my former brothers. Whether you want to use Mom's gift to build something worthwhile or to continue feeling sorry for yourselves. And if we want to be better brothers? Kevin asked. If we want to actually get to know the person you've become? Then we start having real conversations, I said. About our lives, our work, our goals. About what we've learned and what we want to build. About how to honor Mom's memory by becoming people she'd be proud of. I gathered my documents and put them back in the folder. But first, you have 48 hours to clear your belongings out of this house. I have contractors coming Monday to assess what needs to be updated. Daniel nodded. We'll be here tomorrow to pack everything up. And Maria? Kevin's voice was quiet. Could we maybe take you to dinner next week? Ask you about your business? Actually learn about what you do. I looked at my brothers, really looked at them. They looked smaller somehow than they had an hour ago. Less certain. More willing to listen. I'd like that, I said. But only if you're genuinely interested in learning, not if you're planning to give me advice about how to run my business better. Kevin actually smiled at that. I think we've learned our lesson about giving you advice. As people began to leave the reception, Aunt Patricia pulled me aside. Your mother would be so proud of how you handled that, she said. Firm but fair. Just like she was. I hope so, I said. I really hope so. Later that evening, I sat alone in Mom's kitchen, surrounded by the silence of the house where I'd grown up. Tomorrow my brothers would come to pack their belongings. Monday contractors would come to evaluate updates. Next week, I'd decide whether to sell the house or add it to my rental portfolio. But tonight I just sat in the quiet and thought about the woman who'd raised 3 children, built a small real estate empire, and trusted me to continue what she'd started. On the counter was one final document I hadn't shared with my brothers. A letter Mom had written specifically to me. "My dear Maria," it read, "by now you've had to tell your brothers about your success and about my will. I hope they took it better than I expect they will. You've spent so many years hiding your light under a bushel, trying not to make them feel bad about their own choices. But you don't owe anyone an apology for your success, especially not family who should be celebrating it. Build something magnificent with what I'm leaving you. Build something that creates jobs and opportunities for others. Build something that makes our community stronger. But most importantly, build something that makes you proud. You've already made me prouder than you'll ever know. All my love, Mom. P.S. The garage apartment could be converted into a beautiful studio office if you decide to keep the house. Just a thought." I smiled through my tears. Even from beyond the grave, Mom was still giving me practical advice about property management. Some inheritances, I realized, were about more than money or real estate. Some were about learning to stop hiding who you really are, even when the people who love you don't know how to see you clearly. And sometimes, the best way to honor someone's legacy is to finally stop apologizing for your own success. 2 weeks later, I hired Daniel to help with property maintenance and Kevin to assist with tenant relations. They're both learning the business from the ground up, earning their positions instead of inheriting them. The family house became my new office headquarters, with the garage apartment converted into a beautiful studio space, just like Mom suggested. And every morning when I unlock the front door and see the small plaque that reads, "Rodriguez Property Management, founded 2016, I think about the woman who taught me that real wealth isn't about what you inherit, but about what you build with your own hands and heart."